Hi, this is Mark. In this video, I'm going to talk about my recent diagnosis with bipolar disorder. However, I'm going to firmly affirm right now that I do not believe I have bipolar disorder. It was this psychiatrist who I went to see this past spring, and he diagnosed me, and he said I had borderline psychosis at the time. He basically took it through one session, and he basically said based on the cyclic period and how the duration of each of these cycles that have experienced, he made that conclusion. But when it kind of originated, most of the symptoms that I had was last fall, and I remember being very stressed at work or under some duress just because I had a lot of responsibility loads to take on, and I started craving marijuana. And at that time, I started vaping, and I took a high concentrate sativa variety or sativa dominant tint, or it was a cartridge I got, and it was anyone who's familiar with this. Of course, anytime you take an artificial artificially enhance the properties of any product, such as like marijuana, and you increase the psychoactive properties. In this case, marijuana, it's going to have a lot of potential negative effects and can easily potentiate psychosis. And that's why there's a lot of you know studies, or a lot of research out there. A lot of you know you can go on forums and they talk about how marijuana can trigger schizophrenia, or trigger bipolar and whatnot. But in actuality, these conditions tend to be on this kind of like the way I view it is like, it's suppose you're going to get the condition at a certain time in the future. Well, if you take marijuana, it may be just a catalyst, and it may cause that time frame or that to kind of collapse. So therefore, that time that you're going to actually start exhibiting symptoms, it becomes earlier. Like it starts in an earlier period than it would have naturally started at. So with any condition, I think that can be the case. Something that is a catalyst, just like stress. But anyways, I was very stressed, and I just remember when I started taking it, I started blowing up with like I mean, at first it kind of got into like poetry. My mind was racing. I had idea after idea, revelation, funneling in. I thought I could read people's minds at one point. I was just constantly texting people, sending messages of constant message after message, probably annoying everyone just with ideas. My mind was just all over the place, racing. And of course, at the time, my sleep was kind of irregular, but at the same time, I was also working, and got my irritability came in waves. Like I remember, like every week or about 2 weeks, I'd get irritability, paranoia, and then I'd lapse into kind of like a semi, like a kind of depressive type of state. And I'd go back, and then I have like all these ideas popping up, and then I have a spell of irritability, and then kind of coincided as well with the marijuana, because I was smoking quite consistently, and I noticed like I had a lot of rebound. If I smoked pretty heavily, it would kind of have a rebound effect, and I'd have like irritability kind of come in, and that could have easily been like the what is it, detoxifying it, or just kind of it getting out of your system. It's causing this change. Anytime you have a change from, what is something is inducing like a cerebral effect, and that creates like it starts dwindling away. It can easily cause your body to shift out of homeostasis. But anyways, like I went through that period, and ideas just flooding, and I had papers, and I'd write all my whatever is like poetry, or rhyming, and kind of had a lot of incoherence. No one knew what I was saying. I basically would go off on multiple tangents. I would be euphoric. I'd be laughing, and just jittery. At one point, I actually got on Vyvanse, which was perfect storm right here. I've got on Vyvanse. I started drinking and smoking simultaneously. I remember I went to a concert, and I was literally shaking. I mean, I thought at one point I thought I was gonna die, like of heart attack, just because heart started racing like crazy. I just, I was just overdoing everything. Of course, with the stress and everything together. But finally, I was able to get out of it, and I remember, I kind of towards like January, I started having like I went into like a kind of a deep depression, kind of almost suicidal, and then at one point, I think it was like in December, and then what ended up happening is I relapsed out of that, and I started, getting all these ideas again, and it kind of came back. And that went on for a while, and then I got into like goal-oriented activities. I even bought Christmas gifts for everyone. That's it was spent a lot of money on that. But I was like very motivated. Had a lot of goals. Wanted to write books. And do this and that. And just too many things at one time. But then it got to the point where like things just started crashing. I started sleeping a lot, and then I lost like motivation. I got tired, fatigued. I thought I was like kind of, dying of cancer or something like that. Or having diabetes at one point because I just remember it got to a point where it would be like 4 or 5 p.m. Like eat pizza. Naturally, I'd normally even if I ate a whole pizza, I won't really get tired or sleepy. Sometimes I do if it's too many carbs, but at this point, it's like 4 or 5 p.m. I eat a few slices. Next thing I know, I'm falling asleep. And I just remember there was this one phase where I was getting so tired, and I just remember hallucinating at night. I started getting hypnagogic hallucinations, and if anyone's unfamiliar with this, basically I've had these before, and they tend to happen during stress or if I'm getting poor sleep, of course. But they happen. Hypnagogic is like right before sleep, and then you have hypnophobic hallucinations, which is like right when you wake up. So what it happens is like the transition period is offset. Usually your brain waves dictate when you're into like in a dream state. And what ends up happening, I believe it's theta waves that you need to. But anyways, my theory is that because my body was forced into sleep so rapidly, it's almost as if my theta waves, I was conscious, but I was converting or was converging towards that in that direction so fast that it overlapped. And I was conscious and I was able to experience the theta wave or the brain waves that are natural during a sleep state. And it was the overlap period, so I was kind of like semi-conscious at that time, and I was, of course, kind of hallucinating. I usually saw shadows, spiders, maybe because I have a fear of spiders. I saw a three-dimensional room one time. Sometimes it's just like out of the corner of my eye, just shadows. And one of the times, like it got worse when I kind of stayed up too late. And I'm pretty sure like this is kind of interesting because if you're in that state and you're naturally really, really lethargic, or really, really, really tired, and your body needs a lot of rest and you're not getting it, well, usually you hallucinate naturally within like maybe a day or 2 days or more. But when you're in this state, it would happen actually much faster. It may take only like a few hours to reach that state because you're already in a state of like dissociation. You're not really your brain's not functioning very well anyways. So that's kind of I think what happened to me when I stayed up like too much at one night, even though it wasn't like most people wouldn't hallucinate after 22 hours of staying up. I did, and of course these were only hypnagogic, so they weren't like I was hallucinating during the day or anything. They're only preceding my sleep. But yeah, that I just had that for a while, and then I went into brain fog. I remember this was the worst. I just couldn't think. I couldn't even. People were talking to me. I was like, "What the heck is going on?" I couldn't do any tasks. I could barely had any motivation. I just sat there at an empty mind. I had no ideas going through my head. I had nothing. It was a complete empty slate. Oh, just felt like total crap. And then that's when my doctor kind of like diagnosed me at the time, put me on Lomacetol. Lomacetol kind of gave me some stimulating effect. I had insomnia, I had some issues with that, hypersexuality. Actually, the hypersexuality actually started coming in waves after the marijuana. And I've cut it out, at least for the past 6 or so months or so, and I'm glad I've been able to, but whether that's residual effects, but these waves of hypersexuality have been they've happened quite a few times. Maybe since last fall, it's happened about three, 4 times of waves of hypersexuality. It's just where it consumes my mind. And that was when my doctor attributed, he thought, manic or whatnot. But yeah, to me, I don't really believe it. It's like, I don't know. It's just, of course, like I'm pretty functional. I don't think, with mania, I know some stories, it can be pretty severe chaotic and, you're basically, uh, you're kind of like you can't really contain yourself or the impulses, emotions is way beyond, what is typical. And I don't think I've gone to really that point. I've never really posed any problems. I'm usually, if not, my idea is it doesn't pose any harm, or it's not too, in terms of coherency, it was kind of that, that was, maybe the peak. or whatever. But I attribute it to the marijuana, intake, and of course with anything that potentiates what's already there. So, of course, marijuana could, of course, kind of maybe make it seem like you're in a hypomanic or you're in a manic state, and it's more of a temporary thing. Of course, I know if like you stop taking that, because really with bipolar, it's more about like biological, natural cycles kind of out of sync. So it shouldn't take any external influence like marijuana or anything to cause a conclusive evidence of a diagnosis. So I just think taking out of the equation, since I took it out of the equation, it's I can kind of dictate it from there where where everything is, and naturally I think I'm pretty in a normal state. I mean I do get depressive episodes at times, and I've had them consistently, but I just don't really find myself really going towards mania. I mean I do have these productive creative highs, but it's not, to me it doesn't do much. I mean it's just I'm not even uh, acting out or anything. I'm just being creative, naturally. I think a lot of people are creative, so um, it's not really, I mean, it could be like a normal state for me. So yeah, that's just my take at it. That's kind of my experience being diagnosed, but I think it was like a false diagnosis. And of course, it's pretty hard to kind of define it, everyone's going to be different. If you go to different psychiatrists, they're going to define it differently. So I don't know. It's just with anyone else who has it, I think just bipolar itself can be quite severe, and sometimes it can seem like you have it, but in actuality, it's not the case. And I just think the definitive criteria needs to be kind of more bounded. It needs to be more firm, rather than, because there's a lot of misdiagnosed cases nowadays, and with BPD, bipolar, ADHD, all these kind of have similarities, and there's some contrast, but they overlap. So the key is, finding the distinctions and figuring out, and not kind of attaching yourself to a disorder, not attaching yourself to the stigma, because there is a lot of stigma out there. But of course, with anything, there's positive, negatives, and benefits, and bipolar can be a gift in some regards, and you could, if you want to call it a curse, and some, other, it's not. I mean, it basically, it's something that shouldn't be shouldn't be taken lightly, but at the same time, don't let it control like the just the negativity out there. It's a disorder that can be managed with, there's good medication at least nowadays, and there's ways to kind of try to rebalance and restart or re-jumpstart the balance of the body, and there's ways to try to mitigate it. And it's kind of like just a journey. It's not. So anyone who has it, yeah, it's just I know definitely it's a huge spectrum, and it's probably anyone who goes to the throes of mania, that can be something that very few experience. It can be pretty yeah, it's not something you want to have. I'm pretty sure, it's not something you do not want to have chaos like that level. It's not what it's been, I think, portrayed as. Not really euphoric all the time either. That's what I know. So yeah, if, that's just my take at it, and I'm going to stop right here, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.